Please mute your phones.
Be you ready?
Let's do it.
Hello and welcome to Talk Heathen. It is September 20th, 2020. It is season 4, episode 38. I'm Eric Murphy.
I'm Vi La Bianca.
Hey V, how's it going?
It's going.
Yeah, how was your week?
It was good up until Friday, and then Friday kind of sucked.
What? Yeah, I remember what happened.
Yeah, but it was otherwise pretty good. I did release a new video on my channel, which I'm excited about. Collabed with Dan.
Yeah, you
Sure
did.
You wanted. And yeah, this Saturday was lovely and lazy, and
Yes, it was.
full of Star Trek and wine, which is as Saturday should be.
I loved it, and I think it was a good way to respond to what happened on Friday. Those people who are watching in the future, Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away on Friday, and so we're all figuring out how to deal with that. That said, announcements.
I did want to give a shout out to somebody who I've been talking to. They are a new atheist. They're just, coming out of religion, and they're going through some shit right now. Their dog died the other week, and now they're having to contemplate surgery, and they're just kind of struggling. So wanted to give you a shout out. You know who you are. I won't name names, but we're rooting for you. And they were actually like, all this stuff happened to me. Oh, and I'm thinking about volunteering for the ACA.
Wow.
I'm working with Tangel. We're going to be putting some stuff together. And I was just like, we have the most amazing people gravitate towards the ACA.
We do. And speaking of, we should give Tangel and all of our volunteers, the people who are working right now as mods in the live chat, and moderators on Facebook, on Discord, on the Reddit, answering emails. We have an incredible team, and we're so grateful that they're here. So we love you guys.
Yeah.
A regular announcement is that Talk Heathen is a product of the atheist community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit out of Austin, Texas. If you like what we do and you want to support us, everything that you contribute goes towards promoting the mission. And the mission is to push for compassionate atheism and the separation of religion and government. We do that through our shows. We do that through outreach and through tons of programs that the ACA helps finance in collaboration with groups like
Recovering from
Religion, and also the Beyond Belief Network and things like that. So if you like what we do, you want to support us, consider going to patreon.com/talkheathen-to-me. That's patreon.com/talkheathen-to-me. 2/3 of the way through the episode, I hop onto Patreon and actually thank our top 5 patrons. And I do that live. I refresh it live. So if you want to hear your name read live today, go to patreon.com/talkheathen-to-me. Any other big announcements?
I think that's it.
You think that's it? There is one thing that I wanted to bring up, and I know I'm going to go into detail off Talk Heathen.
Right. Yeah.
But it's something that I noticed, and I want to hold our side accountable.
Okay.
And that is, quit saying that a person is dishonest, because you don't necessarily know what their intentions are. Somebody can have dishonest intentions, and the way that I separate those out is there's a dishonest argument tactic, and then there's a dishonest interlocutor.
Exactly. When we say, oh, come on, that's dishonest, or it's a dishonest argument, we're not making a claim about the person's motivation. We're not saying the person is dishonest or a or somehow trying to, not engage. Honestly, they just either fell for a dishonest tactic themselves or, need to get called out on a particular argument and then adapt. It's not a moral judgment that we're passing. So
absolutely. And it's important because I'm seeing it online a lot. A lot of atheists are saying, well, look at this dishonest caller. No, There are people who can firmly, confidently believe honestly in, an example that I bring up is the transcendental argument, the presuppositional, way of approaching things. I've met some very, very honest apologists who were using this tactic and were uncomfortable with it. And eventually through kind of working with it and realizing, hey, you know what, I'm not listening to my opponent here.
Right.
They wound up dropping it. And that's ultimately it, is if you've been taught, hey, change the subject away from the conversation when you get to X. It's not until that's pointed out, but you say, hey, that's a dishonest tactic and here's why. Other than that, I do want to find another opportunity in the future to talk about math, because I'm working on it and I want to try and be concise and better about it. But that is not the conversation for right now. Right now, so we have a couple of theists on the line. I do want to see a couple more theists. If you are religious or you have a belief that you want to talk about, tell us what you believe and why. You can call into 512-991-9242. That's 512-991-9242, or go to tiny.cc/callth, and you can call in online, toll-free, anywhere around the world. It's right there in the lower third. Exactly. So there is where did that atheist go?
They dropped, unfortunately.
No.
Yes. But we do have a theist from the Czech Republic who would like to talk.
Okay. Theo in the Czech Republic, you're live with Eric and V. What would you like to talk about today?
Hi, Eric. Hi, V.
Hey, Theo.
I'd like to talk about eschatology and how is it compatible with atheism, or what's your personal opinion on it? Maybe the best way to explain it would be for me to give you a background, my religious background, so that you see where I'm coming from.
Well, so hold on. What's the question itself? Because the tactic that we're going to employ is we're going to assume that you are an honest interlocutor and that you've come to your conclusions for decent reasons, and we could talk about those over time. But what is your conclusion itself? I want to dive right into the meat of the topic.
Conclusion of
Sure. You wanted to ask us, it says, would like to ask hosts if they have any beliefs or hopes concerning future prospects of mankind.
Yeah.
Okay.
So go ahead.
No problem. As an atheist, just purely that atheism has nothing to do with it. Secular humanism, it has to do with it. But if you're asking what the atheist view is, there's none to give. Atheism is just the response to the God claim.
Okay, so would you mind maybe elaborating on your own personal views? Because for me, this question is important.
I'm just wondering, why is it relevant? Is there a religious angle that you're taking to this? Why does it matter?
It does matter to me because when you do some good deeds, you hope that it will have some effect and that you will make a world a better place to be. But if eventually, in the end, it does not matter, it kind of undermines your the whole point of being a good person. Maybe.
Okay. So we can
definitely dive into that for sure. The way I've heard this argument a couple of times, and honestly, I'll be honest, I don't really understand it, because for me, the permanence of a thing does not necessarily relate to its value or its necessity. So why did you eat breakfast this morning if you're only going to have to eat lunch later or breakfast tomorrow? Like, your breakfast didn't exist forever, so why bother eating breakfast? Well, because you need to in order to survive. It makes your day better to have a nice breakfast, right? There are reasons that we do things that have no bearing on whether or not something is eternal. In fact, I would suggest that because things are not eternal, because we are not eternal beings, because everything is finite, that actually makes it more valuable. The reason we like diamonds, allegedly, even though the concept of diamonds being rare is a marketing ploy, more on that later. The reason we like certain fine gems or gold is because it's rare and not in abundance. It's not an inexhaustible resource. And so the fact that we as humans, as people on this planet are exhaustible, we will one day not exist, makes our existence that much more valuable.
I understand your point, but
So what does a God add to the equation?
The God, or maybe believe that there will be some sort of kingdom of heaven or some kind of ideal society in the future.
Okay. So let me give you an example here. Let's say you're driving down the road, you see somebody who is stalled out in the middle of the highway, right? Wanting to be a good person, you find a safe place to park. You get out there and help them push their car to safety. So is it only beneficial if somebody gives you a cupcake when you get home, or were you just being a good person to be a good person? I don't think you need the cupcake. Well, and if you were to say, well, they would have found their way home one way or another, does that mean that you helping them had no value?
I think you don't understand me precisely, because if you're doing it for a cupcake, of course, you're not doing it for the other person. But,
so are you saying, so it sounds like you're saying that Christians don't do anything for other people. They only do it because they want to go to heaven. It sounds rather immoral.
I believe not many Christians really think like that. But for me personally, I don't believe in afterlife or heaven. I just like to know that what I'm doing makes sense in long term, because
so
maybe if you knew that the person you're helping will eventually die the next day, would you still?
Absolutely, because because it makes me feel good. So I give things value, and I choose what is valuable to me.
So it's about your good feeling, not about the other person, or?
Most of the time, I think that is the motivation. Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a value in doing good things. I think there's a social value in it.
Well, I think it's a blending of those things. I think that, for example, we connect with other people, and there's this term, compersion. And it's kind of the opposite of jealousy, in that when you see somebody you love or care about also having a good time, if you observe that, then you feel good feelings because you care about the other person. So it's not an either or situation here. A lot of the time it's I care about this other person, and because I do, helping them makes me feel good. So
I think that still boils down to you feeling good, though.
And again, like I'm more of a pragmatist than you are. So I think that the end goal is what matters. So if the person gets helped, I don't really care if you did it because of, you wanting to feel good, or you wanting to feel selfless and righteous, or you thinking there's a reward at the end. Like, if the person gets helped, then that's all that matters.
Agreed. I just, the usual formation that I come across when somebody says that, right? Well, what's the point in helping anybody if everybody dies in the end? That nihilistic viewpoint. Okay, so we give things value. It's as easy as that. I think the only way things can matter is if we're the ones who give it value. The fact that we agree societally on some things means that we can value things together. And that's why you wind up getting diamonds, as V's example. But right. I don't think that really matters. And I think the idea of an afterlife is kind of a red herring. It has nothing to do with whether or not it's good to do something good.
People are capable of doing good things without the carrot and the stick approach of eternal suffering or eternal reward. And I think that assuming that they aren't is wrong and infantilizing.
That help?
I wouldn't assume so. Yeah. So I just, I must admit, I'm struggling with this idea because, for example, I thought that if tomorrow world would end, today anything would not making sense. But most probably I would do the same today, even if I knew that tomorrow would be the end of the world.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good thought experiment. That's something that you have to grapple with. And I think that it's part of the scariness of entering into a non-religious worldview, realizing the world could end tomorrow. And are you doing what you want to be doing, and why? And would that motivation or action change based on what you knew about the future? Like those are big questions for sure. But that's definitely a journey that I think you're on the right path. You just have to keep following that down.
Yeah. But thank you for calling in.
Christian. Oh, thank you.
Take care. All right. The person called back and I really want to talk to them. Simon in England, you're live with Eric and V. Hi, Simon.
Oh, hi.
Hey, what did you want to talk about today?
Well, I kind of had a question. I'm an atheist, but I had kind of have a ghost story.
Sure.
Okay.
I think that is so important to point out, because you can be an atheist and still believe in ghosts. The question is, are you a skeptic?
Yeah, because the thing is like I've got kids, and they've asked, and I told them I'm an atheist. And then I told him the ghost story, and my son was like, but isn't that proof of the supernatural? And I kind of said to him, no, because there's more than one type of supernatural, and what I experienced hasn't been tested or confirmed by like a third party. But I always had this nagging doubt that, am I right? Can I believe in ghosts and still be an atheist?
Yes. There are plenty of atheists who believe all kinds of things. Now, I think it's silly, and I don't think there's a good reason to believe it. And I'm not going to, sugarcoat that. But I think there are plenty of atheists who believe silly things that I don't agree are true.
Right. An atheist is just someone who doesn't believe in a God. And you can believe in ghosts and not a God. That's not a conflict there.
The difference that we have is when you apply skepticism.
Right. Can you be a skeptic and believe in ghosts?
Have you applied skepticism? So let's just wrap the whole thing together. You are convinced that you had an experience with a ghost, right?
Yes.
Okay. Would that experience, talking about that experience, convince us?
I think so, because it's not like a really scary story or something really elaborate.
I mean, I agree that you believe it.
Yeah.
Would it convince us?
Thinking about it, it wouldn't convince you.
Why?
Because I don't know really. It's just that the story isn't that exciting. It's not really, and because I kind of didn't. I experienced the ghost, but I didn't see it.
Okay. So how do you know that it was a ghost? How did you come to the conclusion that it was a ghost?
The story it's really quick. It's just I was in a building I've never been in before because I was doing some training. I was in the bathroom and I was washing my hands when like you've got that 2-door system for a bathroom. I heard the 2 doors open. I felt the inertia of someone walking past me, and the inertia when they closed the door and locked it. And then I went to dry my hands, and when I turned around, both of the stalls, the door was open.
Okay.
I mean, as soon as I turned around, both of them were empty. And I looked and I was thinking, what the... And I just dried my hands and walked out and never went into that bathroom again.
Sure. Honestly, there are lots of times that I've gone to the bathroom and not really remembered what I've done. And I think that kind of falls into this category of you do something enough times, it becomes rote. Right? There are plenty of times when I drove to work for years and years and years, and eventually I stopped remembering my drive because I just went into autopilot. So is it more, I think it'd be more likely that you went into autopilot or misremembering things, or, I mean, some unexplained phenomena. But even if you say it's entirely unexplained, I still don't think that there's sufficient reason to conclude ghosts.
Right. And here's where I'm coming from. That sounds creepy. That sounds really creepy. I wouldn't go back into that bathroom either, honestly. That would be creepy. But I also have a ghost, quote unquote, experience. I worked at one of the most haunted inns in America when I was a teenager in college. And over the summer, I was a housekeeper there, and I would go in and I'd change all the bedding and clean the bathrooms. It's an awful job. But one day, everybody else, all of the other housekeepers, everybody believed in ghosts. I was the only person who didn't quite. And I wasn't an atheist yet, and I wasn't really a skeptic yet, but I didn't really buy into it. But one day I was in the laundry room, and several people have heard this story before. I was all alone in the room, and one of those little like laundry detergent cups was on a shelf up super high. It thwacked off the shelf and ricocheted around the room and fell down just by itself. Wow. Just, I was just sitting there staring at it like, all right, that just happened.
So did you conclude that it was a ghost bee?
No, even then I was like, I don't know what that was. Like, I guess it could have been. Like, I have no evidence to the contrary, except for the lack of evidence that there are ghosts. Yeah. But like, it's totally okay to say, I had this really weird experience that I can't explain, and leave it at that. We don't need to come up with and this is what it was. Without a doubt, in the real world, I'm making a claim about how the universe works now. I had a weird experience. It could have been any number of things. Maybe something hit the other side of the wall that I missed, and it caused the thing to fall off, right? Maybe I have no idea.
Or the more you thought about it, the more you embellished.
It could be. That could be too.
I mean, that happens pretty much everybody.
Yeah, fish stories are real.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, the more you think about it, the more you adjust and adjust and adjust, and it has nothing to do with whether or not you're an honest person. It has everything to do with the way your brain works. And so eventually, maybe a cup falling and dinging off the counter and bouncing over to the other side can build up into, a more fantastical experience.
Especially if you're in an area that is saturated with that, right? If you are in a culture that talks about ghosts, of course, if something that creeps you out and is unexplainable happens, that's where your brain's going to go. In the same way that once people started talking about little gray aliens,
it's called priming.
Yeah, more and more people experience that kind of alien abduction because that was the narrative that people bought into. So I would say totally believe that you had this experience. Can't explain it myself. Don't think it's a ghost.
Yeah. So there's a difference between probable and possible. And I think that you need to first determine whether or not something's possible before you can make a probability claim. Mm-hmm. I don't think ghosts are possible. Yeah. So I don't know what the probability of a ghost doing it is, because I don't even know if ghosts are a thing. But I think that there are plenty of things that happen naturally in the world around us that could cause that, and it could be reviewing it after the fact and getting more and more. I had a ghost story for a really long time. And eventually, I really did believe that I saw a ghost. And, and the more and more I think about it now, the more I realize, I don't think it was that fantastic when I started telling the story. I think it just
grew and grew.
It grew and grew. And over time, it developed into something that I truly strongly believed. And it wasn't until later that I, started really examining how our brain works. When you're accessing that memory, you're changing that memory. And that's...
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I would say is practice skepticism. Give it the Socratic approach. And that is, what if I'm wrong? What would that look like? How do I know that I'm right?
Because I thought to myself, if I had another ghost experience, one where I actually saw someone or something, I wouldn't immediately think, oh, there's a God. I would scream Jesus Christ, but I wouldn't immediately go to religion.
Well, but the other thing is there are lots of pareidolia. I talk about it all the time, looking at shapes in the clouds and seeing faces. We as humans do that. It's just something that we do.
Also, there have been some studies can't quote them off the top of my head, but there have been people who have researched why certain buildings feel haunted. And a lot of the time what they found is there is a noise from some
like
kind
frequency,
of
right?
a frequency that we can't hear, but we still physically react to. So we walk into a building and say, "Ooh, I got the shivers." It could be because you're just hearing a noise that your ears can't process, but your brain is. And so there are tons of really cool, awesome, like physical and natural explanations for these things that we just don't have a full grasp of yet. So again, totally believe you had this experience. And I think that shared experiences like this have created the concept of ghosts to begin with. But I think we just don't know quite enough about it yet to make a determination.
Yeah. And I, again, that cultural priming is just incredibly important.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there are plenty of times where people just, you know, experience a hallucination. You know, we are all susceptible to it. And there are some people who are stuck hallucinating for the rest of their lives. You know, people who have schizophrenia, who see things, hear voices. Yeah. Is that schizophrenia?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just part of being human, man.
Yeah.
But hopefully that's a different way of looking at it. You can be an atheist and have non-skeptical worldviews. I don't think that a skeptic could also believe in ghosts, though.
Right. Okay.
All right.
Awesome.
Man.
Great question, though, and one we should address more often.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Take it easy, man.
Yeah, you too. Thanks.
Yeah. So yes, we have theists on the line and I wanted to talk to them too, but seeing an atheist saying, "Hey, I want to talk about this ghost story." Mm-hmm. Gosh, it's important. Again, we're holding our side accountable here. You know, I see you in the comments. Yes, we do read the comments. We don't respond though.
Don't let them know. I did throw my weight behind Bartok the bat in a last comment debate though. So
yeah.
Well, every so often.
And honestly, it helps keep us sharp. So that's okay. You know, we are fine with different opinions and people disagreeing with us. We want to see all sides of things because we want to explore. We want to be better. We want to be better hosts. Mm-hmm. But this idea that, you know, you're somehow smarter because you're an atheist or you're somehow immune to other, you know, traps mentally that people fall into is BS. If you really want to develop that tool set, you really need to be practicing skepticism there because the atheist position is a conclusion. It's not the tools that got you there. So that said, let's move on and let's talk to Mark. Mark called in last week. Yeah. Mark, you're live with Eric and V. What would you like to talk about?
Hello. Thank you so much for taking my call again.
Hey.
In our conversation last week, which I enjoyed so much, we had a great conversation about the Kalam cosmological argument. And at the very end, we reached an interesting impasse, given that apparently we adopted different theories of knowledge. So the first question, I was waiting a week to ask you this. The first question I wanted to ask you is, what theory of knowledge, both of you, particularly if you subscribe to different ones, what theories of knowledge do you subscribe to?
Well, so I take the, here's the thing, and just so that everybody following along can get there. For a long time, people have said justified true belief is knowledge, right? Do you know a thing? Are you justified in it? Do you accept it as true? And is it true? Right? If all that criteria is met, then you know a thing. I think that there are enough edge cases where somebody can be coincidentally right. That I think that it's just not a great platform. I think it helps generally, but not necessarily always. And so when you're talking about knowledge, you can be justified, absolutely. And I would hope that, you know, that justification is important. It's something that we should be talking about. That you believe it, I think, is a given because you wouldn't be espousing it if you didn't believe it. But the true part, I think, is tough because truth is just that which corresponds to reality. And I think you could justifiably believe a thing and it not be true. And you can justifiably believe a thing and it be true, but your justification has nothing to do with the truth of it. You could just be coincidentally right. So it's the true part that I have a problem with.
Gotcha. Of course. So let me ask you this, because I, of course, wholly believe that you can hold a belief and be justified and have a warrant for that belief, but the belief not actually be true. So I guess circling back to our conversation from last week, how, I guess, when applying your own epistemology to the premises of the Kalam, I think we reached an impasse in what we were able to affirm. So where, I mean, I guess I don't want to ask because I know it was a week ago, so you don't remember perfectly. But
well, and also,
I know the premises of.
Yeah, definitely going over it is important, especially because this is clipped and people watch the clips out of order and at different times. Yeah. So making sure we go over it. So yeah, go ahead and give the premises and we'll shoot through it.
Yeah. Okay. So premise one, the universe began to, everything that begins to exist has a cause. Premise two, the universe began to exist. Premise three, therefore the universe has a cause. And as we defined last week, the type of cause we're referring to is an efficient cause. And what we mean by universe is all of physical reality, whatever that may be. So what, given, I guess, your theory of knowledge, what hiccups do you hit along the road?
Problem of induction.
Okay, could you elaborate?
I would love to. I would love to. So we talk about, and I know this is really, really deep philosophy, but this is something that I love. I'm not going to do this the whole, for those of you who are watching, this is not going to be the entire episode, but I love this and I'm going to indulge this for a minute, damn it. So we have three really core things that we have to presume. And I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, right?
Are you talking to me? I'm sorry? No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sure. So a thing is what it is. It isn't what it isn't. And it can't be what it is and what it isn't at the same time.
Yeah.
Those core pieces are pivotal and really foundational to us being able to understand and coherently talk about a subject. And I think that is something that we are accepting, but we cannot justify it without using it. It's a circular thing. So we're starting off with giving each other, we're assuming that we're giving each other that.
Yeah, no, we are exactly in the same boat on identity, non-contradiction, excluded middle, all of that. So what issues with induction? I'm sorry for turning this around on you, by the way. I'm just so curious. What what are your issues with induction as it pertains to the premises we detailed a few moments ago?
Mm-hmm.
Sure. So we're taking a deductive argument, and we are approaching it, but all we have is our own experience. We can definitionally, work through deductive arguments, but because we're limited to our personal experience, we can't really get out of that inductive place most of the time. And so there's this assumption that we're moving out of that so that we can continue the conversation. I think that is a core thing that sucks, but we haven't figured it out. So
I agree. We have to live under the happy illusion that we can a priori rule out solipsism, for example,
exactly.
or that like the epistemic value of the laws of logic. I agree. So in presupposing what's like the foundational sciences, right? With that presupposition, what issues in the Kalam, or like what specific premises can you not affirm?
Well, number one, that the universe had a cause.
Well, so that's the conclusion that follows from the two premises. So like everything that begins to exist has a cause, and the universe began to exist.
Right. Oh, so sorry. The universe began to exist. Premise two. But I mean, regardless, that actually is not as interesting to me as where we go from there. So let's say I grant it. So what? What does that mean?
Okay. Oh, see, to me, the premise too is more interesting. I mean, it's your program, so I'll talk about whatever you want.
I appreciate it. I just want to make sure that we're having a conversation that people are having fun with as well. Let's say
absolutely.
So let's say we grant your argument. So what?
Yes. Okay. So specifically, if you grant it under the terms we outlined earlier and last week, that means that the universe had a cause that would be immaterial. That means the cause because it had to be timeless and spaceless.
No.
That means the cause had to have. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You're applying William Lane Craig's, analysis to Kalam.
Here's where I'm hanging up, because if I'm remembering correctly, when you described an efficient cause, you described the analogy you used there was somebody taking wood and nails and making a table, right? So something that was not the table, making the table. So something outside of the thing we're talking about, making the thing. Is that is that the definition of efficient cause? Because I went over the call from last week and I think I got hung up there.
Yeah, no, great memory. Yeah, the thing that brought about the change in the phenomena at interest from T1 to T2.
Okay. Where in that do we expect that it's non-material? Because in your analogy, the person is still material. They're just putting together another material thing.
Do I expect that there is no material? So the idea of efficient cause can be compatible with both the efficient cause being material and the efficient cause being non-material.
Strong disagree.
What? Give me another example of an efficient cause that is non-material apart from your proposed cause.
Give you an example of efficient cause that is not material.
That is not your cause.
So I would say that if we define the universe as all of what exists, all physical reality, whatever that may be, and if because this is presupposing what Eric said. He doesn't grant premise 2, but for the sake of the argument, we're presupposing it, right?
Right, presupposing this.
Exactly. So if we're presupposing premise 2, then it seemingly follows that the universe had an efficient cause. But if the universe is defined, this is why I said.
Here's
to go into detail. I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, I think we're talking past each other. This is setting aside the Kalam argument for a minute there. You said that an efficient cause can be material or immaterial. It applies to both material things, like a person putting together a table, and immaterial things. Now, I want an example of an immaterial efficient cause that is not the premise, the conclusion of your argument, because that would be circular. So give me another example of something that you've observed or heard about or read about that is an immaterial efficient cause.
Yeah, maybe a better way to phrase what I said earlier is if there was such a thing as immaterial causes, then it would fall under the umbrella of efficient cause. So how is that not a circular argument then? If an immaterial efficient cause exists, then a material efficient cause exists.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm saying.
Okay, but we would have to grant this universe that immaterial efficient causes exist in order to talk about your argument at all, right? Because if we don't grant that that's a function of the universe, then we're kind of stuck.
Well, this is where it gets to whether we presuppose the argument or whether we dive into the premises. Because if we are presupposing that the universe has a cause, it just necessarily follows from the conclusion. Like, what's the alternative?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. That's the thing, and that's the problem with William Lane Craig. It does not follow.
Right. William Lane Craig builds all of his arguments on the premise, if God exists, then. He says that himself. If God exists, then this argument makes sense. Cool. We need to know if God exists before we can agree on the argument.
Exactly.
Same thing here.
Yeah. An easier way for people to follow it that we don't think enough people do follow it is, if I'm right, then I'm right. Take the if out and let's talk about whether or not it corresponds to reality, right?
Say that again. Ask that question again. I'm sorry.
Sure. If you take the if out,
yes.
Let's see if it corresponds to reality. V asked you a really good question. Is there something that is immaterial that can create anything? Because you said that it is just as likely, or that it can happen. We don't think that.
No, that's
what
not
immaterial things create?
I was trying to be very precise with my wording that this could be my fault. I did not say that I have evidence of immaterial causes. I am saying that if one existed, then it just falls under the efficient cause umbrella, which was responding to a statement earlier. So
okay, but I'm saying, I hear you, and I don't think that's what you were saying. I'm saying that in order to convince me of your concept of an immaterial efficient cause being the cause of the universe, you first have to present me with evidence that immaterial efficient causes exist somewhere that isn't the conclusion of your argument. So I'm just giving you the directest route to convincing me of this.
No. So, for example, with any scientific theory, I'm a social scientist, so this is true to a lesser extent in social science, but it's true in natural science. You posit something often without knowing if it exists, and you say, what would we expect to see if this hypothesis were true? And then you test it, and then that's how. If scientific discoveries could only affirm things that we already know existed, then we would never be able to learn new things. So that is.
So are you saying that we can use that method of testing to determine if God exists?
We're so far away from God. At this point, I really want to stick on premise 2 of the Kalam.
Okay.
So, because if premise 2 is true, then that is in effect what you would expect if you were discovering that immaterial efficient causes could exist.
Okay, so let's think about this. I think you're trying to falsify the claim and seeing whether or not you can falsify it that way. Correct?
Trying to falsify the claim.
Right. That's what you're doing. If this is true, then we can expect this. And when you test it, if it does not happen that way, you have falsified the claim. That is what you're doing. That is the scientific method. You're creating a falsifiable statement and then determining whether or not it's falsified through that. That's what you're testing for.
Yes, correct.
Okay. So I think that is not a falsifiable statement. I think that you are convinced it is.
Not a cause?
No, that immaterial things can create things. And if that is the case, then blank. I think that is where we get off. That and not get off, but I mean, we leave the station. That we are no longer on the same train when you say that.
I am not using "Does the universe begin to exist" to prove that. I am saying that if we have independent warrant, right? So I am not saying the scientific evidence gives us warrant that there can be non-material efficient causes. I am saying that scientific evidence gives us warrant to believe that and philosophical evidence gives us warrant to believe that the universe began to exist. That's what I'm saying.
Why did you switch from science to philosophy? Wait. You switched there from scientific reason to philosophical reason. Why'd you do that?
I meant both.
Okay. So what is the scientific reason you have here?
Sure. So I guess it depends on the cosmological model is the short answer. So if the universe is simply, let me put it out a different way. If you adopt many of the expansionary models of cosmology, then many of those models result in a t=0 where the universe, where physical reality does not exist. Now, there are some models where that is not compatible, but I do think based on the argument of the impossibility of a past infinite.
There we go. There you go.
I think both of those arguments make the premise more plausible than not.
Right. And I think there's the problem. And we can break this down for people who want to follow along. And that is modally, when we're talking about, taking out all possible other ways, right? So we create a tick box and we're going, okay, we have this many possible reasons for whatever we're trying to explore, right? There's a car that's burned out in the road. Okay, let's list every possible way that a car can burn out in the road, and let's start listing out, and kicking out all of the ones that don't fit. And finally, that which is whatever's left is the answer. I think that is a problem, because I don't think you're able to do that. I think there are an infinite number of ways that I can, honestly, navel gaze about the beginning of the universe. And if that's possible, then it follows the exact same way. If thinking about the beginning of the universe right now somehow telepathically created the beginning of the universe, and if that is sufficient, then it's sufficient. We can go and have that argument exactly the same way. You're creating a box that literally anything can fill, and then saying that we've narrowed it all the way down to that one conclusion. I think that's just not what's going on.
Right.
Do you think that something being past infinite is metaphysically possible?
I don't think that actually strengthens your argument. Because no matter what my view of it is,
Yeah.
No matter what my view of it is, it does not impact the truth claim that you're making.
That's an argument from incredulity there.
Exactly. If you can't prove me wrong, or if you have a different view, then this claim that I'm making stands. It doesn't matter, dude. The answer is I don't know. We don't know. And if you want to move out of science, because I don't think the realm of science can get us there, at least not where we are, then you have to move into philosophy. And if you're talking about philosophy, then I think that if you were to write this out, you're going to get to a point where you're going, okay, if X, then, and we can move forward, right?
I disagree with the whole premise that this is an argument from incredulity. I think that we can say that something being past infinite is incoherent, like logically, internally contradictory.
Right, because of pragmatics, because of the way we use words and what we use words to define things as. You can't use temporal words to describe a temporal phenomenon if a temporal phenomenon is not there to describe. I get that, but that does, again, that's a linguistic argument. We can go down that road as well, but that doesn't have any bearing on what's actually happening out there in the real world.
Yeah, so again, you're arguing about whether or not the universe had a beginning, and you're going back to that. We are arguing whether or not something that does not exist in time or does not have any physical makeup, that is immaterial, can create something. Do you see that we're talking past each other right now?
I do, because I don't believe we can entertain I believe addressing premise 2 of the argument is a prerequisite to addressing your concern, which is why I'm literally not trying to be difficult. I can't get
that's okay.
Your concern until
that's okay. So we granted it so that we can move forward and have a conversation outside of that.
Here's where I'm getting hung up, just so I'm clear, Mark. So we granted the base cosmological argument, Kalam, right? We granted those 3 premises. I still have a problem with how you are defining cause. That's where we're getting hung up. We can all agree, for the sake of argument, Kalam, those 2 premises in the conclusion, fine. Our answer is, what does that cause? We don't know yet. Science hasn't figured it out, but they're working on it. Your answer is inefficient, non-material, probably timeless, probably personal cause, and we are not convinced of that. So it doesn't matter. We've granted the base Kalam argument. Sure, our problem is with what you're defining cause as, because we're defining cause differently. That's where the differentiation's happening here.
Well, if we're defining cause differently, then you're not presupposing the argument.
No, hold on. No, because you're no. Hold on. No, you're snaking in an assumption that we didn't grant.
Oh, okay. I didn't intend to. Shoot.
No worries. That's okay. So the assumption that you're creating is that immaterial is necessary for cosmological argument, right?
Material is necessary for. If premise 2 of the argument were to be true, that would be an immaterial cause. That is the case I'm making.
All right, you have not convinced us of that.
No.
And this is why I wanted to really to dig in on premise 2, particularly the possibility of if it is possible for a universe to be past infinite, because that to me, I think that is incoherent and cannot happen.
So
wait, you think why? Why do you think that?
Sure. Because in order for us to reach today, we would have to traverse an infinite amount of time, and thus today would never be reached because you would have to traverse infinity. Because
that's not how that's.
No, that's Zeno's paradox, and no, absolutely not.
Okay, I'd love to know where you disagree.
Absolutely. So after that, we're going to need to move forward because we've spent a lot of time on this call, even though I can talk about this all day long.
Yeah, right.
So for those of you who are watching, here's why this is important. There are a number of apologists who are talking about Zeno's paradox, and they keep bringing it up, right? Another example that a lot of apologists bring up is the infinite Grim Reaper thought experiment. I'm sure you've heard of that one, Mark.
Yes, to me, all the atheist responses to both of these paradoxes confuse logical infinities and metaphysical infinities. But I haven't heard your answer, so that's why I was curious.
Sure, no problem. So I'm going to go all the way back to Zeno because I think that the more we can remove, the easier it's going to be. So he supposed that someone is in a race with. I think it was Achilles, was in a race with a tortoise, and that the tortoise starts, and after Achilles goes, after a certain amount of time, he has halved the distance to the tortoise. And in the same amount of time, he's halved the distance again. And he continues to halve the distance to the tortoise, but will never actually overtake the tortoise.
Mm-hmm.
How is that possible?
Yep. So,
right.
Yeah,
the problem is
that confuses. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No worries. I think that is a fundamental misunderstanding of math.
No, I do a lot of Bayesian probability.
Yeah, Bayesian probability doesn't come into it. It is a misunderstanding of math.
I also this is confusing the logical concept of infinities, and particularly in the case of Zeno's paradox, potential infinities, like a potential logical infinity versus metaphysical infinities. And if anything, the Grim Reaper example is actually a better argument against, or if you were to refute the Grim Reaper example, that would be a better refutation against premise 2, because
Got it. Yeah. So I understand, and I think that's a red herring. It doesn't matter. If you watch South Park, I think this is the Chewbacca defense. So ultimately, you can't. The idea you can't resolve a paradox, right? That's ultimately where we're at, right?
Paradox. I don't think it exists. No, I think you're creating a false paradox. I don't think it exists.
I'm not the one presenting the argument. You are.
No. I'm saying yes, correct. So presenting.
That's okay.
I'm saying the refutations that I typically hear that respond to either the Grim Reaper argument or Zeno's paradox I think are false, because Zeno's presupposes a starting point, and then it confuses metaphysical infinities with like a potential infinity by which you would divide distance. I'm sorry.
No worries.
I think we may be losing the audience a little bit.
Yeah, we need to move forward. Mark, call back or actually mail at talkheathen.com. I want to continue this conversation, but we need to move forward because it's starting to slow down, and we want to have
people are like,
other callers.
Grim Reapers and Chewbacca, what's happening?
Yeah. For those people who don't want to, who are trying to understand it, look up the Chewbacca defense. It basically, I think it is absolute nonsense that is thrown out there, and you and I can talk about it in the future, but in the meantime, take it easy, man.
Yeah, thanks for calling back in.
You've been very generous with your time. Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Thank you. Thank you for keeping me on track.
Yeah.
I could go down that road forever.
Oh, I saw you falling down. I was like, better grab the back of your coattails there.
I sincerely appreciate that.
Yeah.
Who do we want to talk to?
Let's talk with Penelope.
Okay. Penelope, you're live with Eric and Vi. Hey.
Okay, so my question is in regards to like chakras. I don't have a whole lot of information on them, but my counselor has suggested using them as a way of help to deal with like other traumas. Mm-hmm. And my question, I don't necessarily believe in them, but my question is like, at what point does usefulness outweigh truthfulness in regards to things that maybe they aren't true, but they're useful? So you treating them as if they are true, knowing that they aren't true, like at what point is that a problem, or is that a problem?
Right. That's a really good question. And my first thought is the first thing I want to determine is if your counselor thinks that they're true or just useful. Because if they think that it's just a useful, visualization tool to help you relax or help you open up, parts of your body or whatever, then that's cool. You need to make sure that's the case, because if they actually believe that you have chakras and that focusing on them is going to help you, you need to find another therapist. But to talk about your larger question, I'm put in mind of the body scans that I do sometimes. So what I'll do every once in a while, and this is a mindfulness technique to relax, to kind of zone out and fall asleep if you want to. You lay down and you just picture your body, and you start with your feet. And you think about your feet, and you're aware of them, and then you move up to your calves, and like you just go up your body, and you just feel every part of your body. And when I'm doing it, I have visualizations that help me to do that. Ooh, my feet are glowing. I'm going to imagine that. That's going to help me visualize it. Do I believe my feet are really glowing? No. Can I look up and be like, yep, they're normal feet? So I'm going to regret talking about my feet this much on the internet. I know this.
Yeah, it's going to come back and haunt you.
But point is, if you're using it for a visualization technique, if it helps to imagine points of light in your body to focus on for whatever meditative purposes you've got, cool, go ahead, do that. That's not a problem. If you think that you actually have chakras, or if your counselor does, then we come into the area where, well, are you using the best science to actually treat your issues? Because if you're not, then you might be losing the option of actually having somebody who gives you real medical treatment and scientific advice, as opposed to, well, focus on, the throat chakra.
Well, and I mean, yeah, and it ultimately, look at how it's going to affect your pocketbook, right? Are you actually going to a doctor? Are you going through therapy? Or is somebody saying, hey, we need to align your chakras by giving you a very specific woo, do they want to do cupping? Do they want to put needles in you? Do they want to crack different, parts, muscles and think that's going to realign your chakras? Like, there's definitely a difference between utilizing that because it helps you visualize, like Vi said. The downside is if you start to think of that as true in the real world. Because when you do that, then you can get misled when it comes to actual therapy.
Yeah,
and a lot of what Vi said.
A lot of those people charge a whole lot more money too. Yeah. So it's if you're going to be putting money into this and time into this and research into this, think about whether or not that might be better spent pursuing a proven course of treatment.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, for sure. I
appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thanks for calling in. I love the atheist callers we're getting this week.
We are
getting some big questions.
I know people. This is highly controversial.
It's been a while. It's been a couple of months.
It has, and it's a different topic.
He actually he drew in last week. So you said you wanted to talk about math.
It is, and here's the thing: if you don't like this next caller, realize that this person called in. If you want to see us work on other apologetics and other apologists and all of that, we're limited to the people who call in. That's why we're picking them, because they called. Mm-hmm. With that said, Kevin.
Hi, Kevin.
In New York. How you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing good. Thanks for taking my call, you guys.
Absolutely. What did you want to say? What did you want to talk about?
Well, the first thing I wanted to talk about was how one person can come to the idea of the existence of God, and I brought up the 1 + 1 = 2 argument having to do with mathematics, because it's very simple. Now, the reason why the reason why I brought that up is because knowing that very simple thing, we can then ask 2 other questions, which I think are very important, but it kind of goes into the philosophical realm. What I mean by that is that the questions we can ask is, when did 1 + 1 = first start equaling 2?
That hold on. Let's
1 + 1.
Let's rewind a little bit here. Do you think that? So I just want to make sure that we're on the same page here. Are you saying that math is objectively true in the real world, and that because of that, there's objective truth that points to a God? Is that your argument?
Well, in many respects, mathematics is concrete, but it is due to change when depending on what you're talking about.
So math is a tool.
The tool for,
and
it is a tool for reflection of reality.
Sometimes it's there for mental masturbation. Sometimes it's there for games. Math is not objectively true. So saying 1 + 1 = 2 does not get you anywhere other than that relationship of numbers. See, here's the thing, is people think that numbers exist, right, in some kind of platonic way, that there's, some number that you can hold in your hand, or a way that we're treating them. We're treating them like nouns. They're not nouns. They're adjectives. Right? When we're talking about a car, how many cars? 1 car. That is a adjective describing the noun car. And so when you're talking about 1, you can also talk about other adjectives like wet. The car is wet, or dirty, or
the car is V and you were driving the car.
Okay, you brought that one up.
Sorry, Thomas, love you.
Yeah. But ultimately, you're talking about descriptors. Descriptors aren't themselves things, right? So let's look at the structure. Yes, math is useful. When we're talking about the function of math, when we're talking about addition, multiplication, all of those functions are important because we can use them, absolutely. But they have nothing to do with reality until we place it in the real world, and then we see if it's useful. Your families don't have 2.3 children. Why? You're misapplying math, because math is not objectively true. It's useful. So when you say 1 + 1 = 2, that doesn't get me anywhere, because you're just talking about something that is useful that does not necessarily reflect reality. 1 Daffy Duck plus 2 Daffy Ducks = 3 Daffy Ducks. Does that mean that Daffy Duck exists in the world? And he left.
Did he drop?
Yep.
All right, then.
You saw my hands. I didn't do it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Kevin remembered why he doesn't call into the show.
That's okay. Chris, in Toronto, you're live with Eric and V. What would you like to talk about?
Hi, I want to know, what were the atheist movement's goals, and where is U.S. society today regarding each of these goals?
Woof.
Oof.
So movement atheism is definitely a contentious term. Go ahead.
I don't know what you mean by atheist movement. Can you give us a definition?
Yeah, so just to clarify, I had a very optimistic and hopeful conversation with Richard Carrier, and he said something very provocative to me. He said that the atheist movement is over, and he told me that if you think that the atheist movement still has something left to do, then you misunderstand what the goals of the atheist movement actually were.
Wow, I strongly disagree with that.
Absolutely.
Continue, though.
I thought it was provocative, but very, very hopeful. If you look at what he told me, it made me so hopeful for the future. Basically, he told me that once atheist culture becomes mainstream, you can sit back and run the clock and let it bake and give it 3 generations, and the U.S. will be as secular as Europe in 40 years.
Yeah.
So first of all, he basically said that the battle is over and we can sit back and watch, and we're going to be as secular as Europe in 40 years, which is great news, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, you could see exactly how that worked with women's rights and abortion, right? Now, we won that battle, so we were just sitting back and...
Sitting back really worked there.
Yeah.
Sitting back during the Obama years really worked.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, so there's an assumption there that other people are still doing the work.
Right.
And when everybody makes that assumption, nobody does the work.
Right. If Richard wants to sit back and let it bake, that is his prerogative.
Absolutely.
Cool. He can do that. The only reason that we're going to get to where we want to be is because other people continue working.
Yeah, so he said that basically the only ingredient that you need is that atheist culture needs to be mainstream and available for kids to be exposed to. For example, have you guys heard of the Quiverful movement?
Oh, yes.
So for people who don't know what the Quiverful movement is, it is a fundamentalist movement in Christianity. I'm sorry?
Well, Carrier told me that this movement failed because they wanted to have a bunch of Christian babies, but the kids just grew up to be atheists.
I'm sorry, the movement failed? It's still going on.
Quiverful movement?
Yeah. It's still a thing. People are still doing that. That's one of the reasons why they want to outlaw abortion.
For people who don't know what the Quiverful movement is, it's a movement to have as many freaking kids as possible.
I think the Duggars.
Yeah, if you can't convert people to Christianity, that's okay. We're just going to pop out more Christians.
Right. It is building your army. You know, it's a home-baked Christian army.
Yeah, having your quiver full.
Right. It's terrible.
Yeah.
It's militarizing your children from birth to be political pawns in your agenda. It's absolutely.
Carrier told me that the movement backfired because first of all, these kids just ended up becoming atheists. And secondly, he said the more strict you are, the more atheistic and rebellious the kids turned out to be.
So I don't know how useful the generalization is to the point, but let's move away from Carrier because I'm starting to feel uncomfortable talking about somebody who's not in the call.
Right. I do want to say that I don't think that's I think that if we're adopting the philosophy that if something is mainstream, we just have to sit back and watch it happen, then we can't tell whether or not the Quiverful movement is a success or a failure because it's still in the process. The kids who were created to be soldiers of God may have rebelled currently, but they were still raised in that environment. Christianity is still the overwhelming cultural inference here. So they may get tired of being rebellious and go back. We don't know yet. So if we're willing to make broad, projections about what atheism is going to be in 40 years, we can't say that we can't not do that to other worldviews as well. I think that's dangerous.
Yeah. So just to wrap us back into just to wrap us back into the reason for the call, you wanted to know what are the current goals of the atheist movement. I'm not a spokesperson for atheism, but I can tell you what I think. And neither is V, but they can tell you what they think.
Excuse me. I am a spokesperson for atheism.
The spokesperson.
V, yes. Yes, it is me.
Okay, so I'm going to mute V.
Here.
So we are associated with the atheist community of Austin. The atheist community of Austin has a mission statement, and that is the promotion of compassionate atheism and the separation of religion and government. As far as you want to talk about movement atheism, I think that is a loose term that's applied to a lot of atheist skeptics, mostly, who share similar goals. And they call that movement atheism. That as a thing, you can apply it in a whole lot of different ways, but where we're sitting from what we're doing, we are wanting to promote the cause of compassionate atheism and the separation of religion and government.
Yeah.
Does that help?
Do you guys agree, for example, that politicians can no longer fearmonger about atheism?
No. I do not agree with that at all.
Look at the vice president.
Do you see what, Literally Candace Owens, who is a pretty intense spokesperson for the GOP, has literally tweeted yesterday, no one on the left believes in God, and that's why we need to beat them. That is the talking point. That is the talking point. They are godless. That is why they're terrible and why they don't deserve to be in power.
Yeah. So,
do you guys agree that atheists have a good political lobby in Washington now, though?
I think it's better than it used to be, but I think that right now, if you look at Congress, what's the makeup of Congress right now in terms of how many out atheists are there? 2, 3? It doesn't represent the population because it's still politically very risky to come out as an atheist, especially if you're not on a coastal state. If you're representing somewhere in middle America, coming out as an atheist is basically a one-way ticket out of your seat.
Yeah, I've been involved in this movement for 3 years tops. And I think I've met the majority of people who are doing that in Congress, in Washington, who are actually, knocking on doors and are actually approaching senators and congressmen. If that's the case, there are not enough of them.
Yeah.
We need a whole lot more.
Would you agree with the claim that atheist culture, the mainstreaming of atheist culture, is complete and that it's become mainstream now?
I would love for that to be the case. When that happens, the show will not be useful anymore.
I think we're having confusion here about what mainstream means. I think if you look at TV, if you look at film, yes, it is a lot more secular in the way that they approach things. A lot of characters make jokes about not believing in God or being an atheist or what have you, and it's not like boycotted. Yeah, in that way, sure. But tell an atheist in the middle of fucking Arizona in a small town that they are the only, that there are other atheists. They will say, no, there are not. I am the only atheist in my community.
We get their emails.
Right. Every day we get people saying, I'm the only atheist in this state. I'm the only atheist in this town. And it's not mainstream for most people. In terms of media representation, we're getting somewhere. Same with other kinds of representation. We're finally making that initial push. But we are still in the beginning phases of making this something that's acceptable to the average American.
Do you think that there is... See, the problem is you can say it's no longer a quote-unquote movement, but that still means that people can't go home. They have to continue doing the work to sustain this secularization arc, in Europe.
You don't have to join a movement. You don't have to become an activist.
Yeah.
That's not a requirement to be an atheist. That's not a requirement to make a difference. But that doesn't mean that the only other alternative is to sit back and watch.
Yeah. The fact is the fact is Carrier did good work. And it's a lot of the good work that was done by the people who came before us. That's why we are where we are now. It's progress, and we're happy to take that torch and continue. He doesn't. There are people who can do a lot for a movement, and then, hey, you know what? I'm done personally. That doesn't mean the movement's over. That just means that, you know what? You've done your part, and that's wonderful. Thank you. It doesn't. We're not trying to invalidate the work that other activists before us have done. No, in fact, they created the platform that we're able to stand on to continue to move forward.
It's also interesting to me, and again, this is all hearsay about what Richard has had. I'm not saying that you misunderstood or are misrepresenting him, Chris, but I again feel uncomfortable talking about this in a concrete way without having him here.
Richard Carey, you're welcome to call the show.
Oh, for sure. That said, I do find it interesting that at the same time that we are seeing a large push of people of diverse backgrounds coming into the movement, a lot of people from the initial movement who are cis white men saying, oh, it's over now. I can sit back and not have to worry about it anymore. Now that we've got Black non-believers, now that we've got so many queer and LGBTQ and racially diverse people coming up and being like, okay, we're taking this on now. We are now the spokespeople. It's accessible. We are doing the work.
Yeah.
Maybe one version of the movement is over. And if that's the case, that's fine with me.
Yeah, it just means we're moving forward.
Yeah.
How would you respond to the claim that this atheist culture sustains itself now, and that's why Matt Dillahunty doesn't need atheist organizations to have an audience and a platform? The culture simply gives that to him now. he would
I
have
think
that
the internet gives that to him. But
we're giving that to each other. Yeah. That's ridiculous.
It's very funny to me because there is a lot of community building that happens on these online communities. It's intentional. And it's not I'm sitting back and letting people come find me. Not for most of us. For most of us, it's going out and finding the people who need to hear from us and finding the people who want to be a part of the conversation. Just because it's moved online and there are no longer maybe as many lecture halls dedicated to this does not mean that it's not still a whole lot of work.
Mm-hmm. But the other point is just one final point.
Yeah, this is going to be the last point.
Concern. Yeah, there's this concern that if Muslims in Europe, and there's obviously a ton of racism around this, but even just a non-racist concern that if Muslims in Europe have very radical kids and they have huge numbers of babies every generation, then the Muslim population in Europe will grow, and then they won't believe in free speech. And it was just very hopeful to hear from someone that that's not going to happen. It's like the Quiverful movement. They're just going to melt into the background of the background secularization rate like any other population, Jewish, Christian, or Muslim.
I think that is an oversimplification of a lot of different factors. I think that if you grow up in a culture like Europe or, to an extent the United States, even if you are religious, your religion is going to be tempered by that progressive culture. For example, there are people in England who consider themselves Anglican. Like that is the religion of the UK. And it's not something that they talk about. They don't go on this, evangelize on the street corners. They don't even really think about it. It's a cultural thing. I see no reason why other religions wouldn't also adopt that. So I don't think that this fear mongering about one particular religion being more radical or more pervasive is reasonable. But I also think that bringing up Muslims and Islamic countries in general is a great way to show that the atheist movement is not over. Like we can say in America, maybe we can sit back a little bit and let loose the reins just a bit and see where it goes. But my atheist movement is not just about the U.S. My atheist movement is about the worldwide.
This audience
it's a universal
is
thing. And there are so many places in the Middle East, in South America, in up north, like northern Russia and everywhere.
15 minutes from where we're sitting.
And 15 minutes from where we're sitting. Everywhere is still overwrought with this. And so I don't know. The idea that it's over is baffling to me. And I really, really hope that that's not a sentiment shared by a lot of people. But hey, if you are privileged enough to think it is for you, that's totally cool.
Thank you for your contribution.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Good to talk to you guys. Thank you.
Take it easy.
Thank you, Chris. I had things to say.
Seriously. All right. Let's move on and talk to Becky. I know Becky. Do you know Becky?
I know Becky.
Hey, Becky in Florida. You're live with Eric and V.
Hi, Eric. Hi, Vi.
Hello.
What would you like to talk about?
I have a problem.
Okay.
My mom has, I may cry. My
That's
mom has
okay too.
adenocarcinoma. It's through her entire body.
Mm-hmm.
And I want the easy answer.
Yeah.
My son is 5, and I want the same ability that my parents had to go, oh, there's somebody, they're still with you, they're in the sky, and I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
Yeah.
And I've explained death. I'm a type 1 diabetic, so I've questioned my religion since I was 9, because why would a God do this?
Yeah.
When I was 20, my dad died. I became a full-blown atheist. And this with my mom has me screaming at the rooftops. And the problem is I'm at the point where I want to look up and go, what do I do?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Where is the easy answer? Because I can't say something that I don't believe to my child.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That is okay.
Absolutely. Well, it's absolutely human to want the easy answer everywhere, always. I mean, so
Especially in this kind of situation.
yeah, it's gonna be okay.
It's just hard because I know neither of you are parents, and oh great, there goes the dog.
It's okay.
Knock it off. Sorry.
That's okay.
I'm gonna knock it off. I'm gonna leave the room. It was very comforting to me as a child to hear
Sure.
that they were still with me. They were watching over me. And then when I grew up, it was like really, really creepy. And then now I'm trying to explain death, but I want an easy way to explain it. And there's nothing.
Parenting Beyond Belief, actually,
Yeah.
the book helps a lot. And I've definitely seen and heard of a lot of different examples. There's a book called We're in a Book. I forget who it, if people are in the live chat and they can remember the series exactly. It's a really, really good example. It's something that Jamie actually told me about years ago. And they're two characters who've realized they're in a book. And one character is really upset about it. And they're like, but how is this okay? Once the book is over, like that's it for us. And the other character is saying, well, then let's enjoy what we have. Let's enjoy these pages until then. When it comes to talking about death, you know, the interesting thing is it's an easy answer for a time, but you don't stop believing a thing just because cognitively you've reached that conclusion. You stop because it stops being helpful. Once you realize that you're talking to the sky and nobody's listening, it doesn't help as much. It doesn't help as much.
That's the point that I'm getting at. I'm completely lost because this is all I have left. This is it.
Yeah.
And I have my son, and that's his best friend. Absolute best friend. We live 2 doors apart. I have prepared him the best way that I can. Why do I still want that easy answer when I know it's not true?
It's very human.
That's what I want to know.
It's a human response to suffering. I feel the same way. A lot of things in the world are very scary right now, to the point of being overwhelming. And it's really, really easy. I was just talking with someone about this today who's a new deconvert. It's very, very easy to want to go for the easy way and the easy explanation, because then you can relax, right? Then you don't have to think about it. Then you can have an ending. And endings, as hard as they are sometimes, are necessary for your own peace of mind and your own health. So I think that it's totally understandable and natural and normal that you want this. And that's not something you should beat yourself up about. It's something you should accept about yourself and see if you can find an answer that will help a little bit more. Because here's the thing, Becky, you were raised in a religion. You said you left when you were 9.
Yeah, pretty much, because I read a book on mythology.
That'll do it. But you were raised with a belief in an afterlife, I'm assuming, and a belief in heaven. And you were given that easy answer at a very formative age when the truth would have helped you more. And so the part of the pain you're feeling now, no doubt, is a result of that indoctrination and that well-intentioned lie that you were exposed to as a kid. And so my thinking here is that as you're thinking about what to tell your son, and of course, this comes with all of the caveats because I am a stranger on the internet. Think about that. Think about when he grows up and he comes to the conclusion that you did. is he going to feel lied to? Is he going to feel like he doesn't have the answers now because he was given a wrong one when he was a kid? I think kids are going to take cues from the adults in their life, and how you react to this and what you say will be what he believes.
Yeah.
And if you say, Grandma is gonna go, like, Grandma's dying, and then she's not gonna be here anymore, but that doesn't mean that we can't continue to celebrate her and remember her and take the things that she taught us and value the time that we still do have together. And it doesn't diminish anything. If you approach it from that perspective, I know that that's going to be really hard for you, because you're coming from this place of having lived with this lie of eternal life. But for your kid, it's going to be okay. He's going to be able to wrap his head around that, and it's going to help him in the long run.
Yeah, and just to
that's a beautiful answer.
Yeah, just to dovetail in there, and that is that you won't need to undo the damage later on. You know, being lied to and believing that you are going to go to a place of infinite cupcakes and tummy rubs after you die means that at some point you're going to have to mourn the loss of said cupcakes and tummy rubs, even if you never got them. It bites. And also, you deserve self-compassion.
Yeah.
You deserve to recognize, hey, it's okay and it's totally understandable. You're wanting to protect your child. That's what you're doing. That's what you always do. You know, when you're a loving parent, that is something that you do. Why is it easy, you know, to tell your child that, you know, bad things happen in the world? No. You want to protect them. You want there to be a happy ending to the story. That's true. But
we're very selfish. As a species, we're very selfish.
Yeah.
It's our pain because we want them with us.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing. Cry with him. Don't hide yourself. And see a therapist. I think therapy is going to be the best, because ultimately, you know, it's okay to say, I miss Grandma.
Yeah.
Well, I do secular therapy.
Good. That's really good.
Yeah.
And one last thing.
The issue is she has absolutely no answer for me at this point on this.
Well, that's because there is not a good way. And honestly, there is whatever answer you come to is understandable.
Here's my last suggestion for you, Becky. We have a Facebook group, the Talk Heathen fan group on Facebook. If you post that you are looking for resources there, either people to talk to who have been through this or books. I think you mentioned we're in a book. It was the Elephant and Piggy series.
Yes, that came up in the chat. Thank you.
Yeah. There are going to be people who get in touch with you and give you a lot of resources and a lot of love. And you're getting a lot of love in the chat right now.
You are. And someone telling me to speak up. Okay. Take care, Becky. Thank you for calling in.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. Before we move on to this theist caller that I'm very excited about, I want to thank the patrons.
Yes, let's do that.
Talk Heathen is a product of the Atheist community of Austin. I've already said that. If you support us, we get to use that to put on the shows and all the stuff that we do. This is the part of the show where we thank our top 5 patrons. Let's do that. I'm hitting refresh right now, just in case.
I will not drum on the table because our audio guy will hate me.
Desert Heathen, Bethany P, Ward Knipling, Charlotte Crum, and Balaam's Donkey. Thank you.
Mike Pence is also tied.
And Mike Pence is tied. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
I can't not shout out that someone named Mike Pence
is supporting the show.
Supporting the show.
Love it.
Appreciate that, Mike.
Thank you. And for everyone who's supporting us, thank you so much. If you like what we do, you want to support us, and you can, go to patreon.com/talkheathen to me. That said, we don't get a lot of Muslim apologists, so I'm excited about this. Let's talk to Manik in Bangladesh.
Nice.
Is it Manik or Manik? How do we pronounce your name?
My name is Manik, Manik. It's Manik
Okay.
in my local. Yes, yes. You can call me anything.
Well, we will do our best not to butcher your name when we say it. Manik, what did you want to talk about?
No
Or Manik?
problem. First of all, let me say that it's really an honor to be talking with you. I've been listening to you guys and Matt. I didn't know that this show was different from what Matt was doing, and I just came to know from someone from the telephone. And it's an honor to talk with you, Eric. I've been a very big fan. I've listened to your talks, your from the Atheist Experience show of Austin, and you are really great. And I'm a Muslim, but I enjoy your talks. And I just want to say that I want to talk as respectfully as I can.
Okay.
And I'll not be trying to prove any point, but I'm a Muslim, and I think that the arguments from the Quran, from a scientific and moral perspective, it's really resonating with me. I've listened to arguments from atheists and other religions as well, and I think Quran is, in my opinion, it is really good. I didn't find any holes in it, so I think I'll be talking on that.
Okay, let's start with a point that I like to make pretty regularly. If you watch, then you probably know I'm going to go with this, and that is that let's say I find one true thing in the book. Does that mean the entire book is true?
No, of course not.
Okay, what if I find 5 true things in the book?
No, of course not. It won't be enough.
So if you want to bring up very obvious things that I'm going to agree with, I'm going to agree with you. It still doesn't mean that the book is everything else in the book is true. So let's take a fantastical claim.
That's why we need to take it on faith.
Well, no, I think faith is a terrible idea. But let's look at a fantastic, claim. What do you think is a claim that's made in the Quran that I would disagree with? What is a miracle claim or a magical claim?
Okay, there is a claim that the sperm of the human body comes from between the ribs and the spine. And
I was thinking more along the lines of flying horses.
Yeah.
I was thinking more along the lines of flying horses, just to be a little more obvious here.
Oh, flying horses. Yes, that would also be objective too.
Okay, so...
and I want to say my English is bad. I'm sorry, but...
you're doing good, man.
You're doing good.
I'm struggling a lot.
You're doing great.
Okay, thank you.
If there's a time that you say, hey, you know what, I don't know, or I need to take some time and think about this, say it, and we could call back another time. So
Okay, thank you. Okay, sure.
So let's take flying horses for an example. Have you ever seen a horse fly?
Yes. No, I haven't.
Why? Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
And
do horses fly?
No, horses don't fly.
Okay, so why do you think it is scientifically consistent that...
No, it is not scientifically consistent. Science is in the realm of empirical knowledge. What's falsifiable, what's observable, in the real world.
Sure.
And religion is not...
Go ahead.
And religion is not, dealing in that world.
Why not?
Religion is... it's not telling you. It's telling you about a world. I think there can be, somewhat, Eric. Some guy said that there is some kind of metaphorical truth. I don't remember his name. It's Brett Weinstein. And that really caught up with me, it resonated with me, because I think most of religion is, they are metaphorical truths.
Okay,
they are not really true in the sense of observation. Cool. Yes.
So would I be, is it totally okay if I go the entire book is a metaphor? I'm going to treat it like any other work of fiction?
No, some of it's true and some of it's metaphorical.
Okay, so that's why that's not a good answer for me, because now there are some things that are true and some things that are metaphors. How do you determine what is truth and what is a metaphor?
I think it's up to you what you take to be true and what you take to be metaphorical, and what you learn. There is a great chance to be atheist by reading the Quran. I think it's very logical to be an atheist by reading the Quran. You don't have to believe it if you don't want to.
So
the standard of evidence and the standard of belief, it's very different to different people, I think.
So does truth matter to you?
Yes, of course it matters.
Okay, so do you think people can have their own personal truth, or do you think truth is something that is ubiquitous? Do you think truth is something that we all have to share, right? We all live in the same reality.
It's true.
That which
Can it both be true at the same time? Can both be true at the same time? Personal truth and truth in the more...
Only coincidentally.
Yeah. No, and we got the right of it. Only coincidentally.
I can create a personal truth that corresponds to the actual world as closely as possible because that's what I value. But again, the only metric we're using to determine whether or not my personal truth is true is objective truth.
Yeah. So okay, my personal truth is that I'm Superman. Is that just as valid as anything else in the Quran?
Actually, that could be true. If you believe you're Superman, you can't fly. You can try to jump from a building and fall, and still believe you're Superman.
Oh, I agree. And so there's the line there, is that there's a difference between what people believe and what is actually real. Now, I'm not saying that
yes, of course.
Silly things. I think people believe silly things all the time. That doesn't make the reality that if they thought they were Superman, they jumped off a roof of a building, they might break their legs. The fact is we live in
reality can be a difficult word. I think reality can be a difficult word, because science deals in the realm of theory, and in science we can approximate to the truth, but we cannot get to the truth.
I agree.
But we can get closer to or further away from the truth. We might not be able to hit the bullseye every time, but we can do our best to make sure that what we're believing is the most, the closest thing. And I think we lost Manik.
Oh, that's a shame. Yeah.
Maybe he'll come back.
Agreed. But it is an interesting topic. And I think that ultimately the tactic there is something that not everybody realizes. It's lowering the standards. It's going, okay, I can't win this, so we're just going to cancel the whole thing. Everybody is equal. Everybody gets a participant trophy.
Yeah.
And no, that's not the case. Things can be closer to the truth. You're absolutely right.
Right.
Just because we're stuck in our own heads does not mean that we can't, work in the world that we're in. There's a reason why we have freaking airplanes, and there's a reason why you're still hearing us, wherever you are in the world and watching this video, because we are able to understand and work with our understanding of the world.
Right.
So it's not all a wash. But that said, we've got more callers on the line, but I really want to move to the Discord for a little bit.
Yeah, why don't we wrap up here?
Okay.
And then hop over to Discord. Maybe some of the people on the line can follow us there.
I think I'd like that a lot.
Okay.
Definitely. So if you want to join us on Discord, we're going there right now. Tiny.cc/ACA Discord.
Manik is back if we wanted to wrap up with him or move to the next week.
Let's move to the next week. I'd love to have that conversation,
Okay.
but I just don't think we have enough time.
Manik, call back.
Please do.
We want to continue this conversation. We're just running short on time.
Absolutely. Jonathan and Chris as well, thank you so much for waiting. I'm so sorry that we didn't have time to get to your calls. We hope that you call again.
Yeah.
That said, you ready?
Yeah.
Let's throw up some love rings.
Didn't even give them a countdown, and they still got it.
I know. We have an amazing crew. We do. I feel like today's episode took 2 minutes. This episode flew by, and I'm not happy about that at all. I need more Talk Heathen.
I have to wait another week.
This is bullshit.
I mean, you do have access to more Talk Heathen on your channel.
I do. I do. I just.
I know.
Okay.
Can we go to the crew cam?
Let's. This is our amazing crew. Thank you all so much. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be able to do what we do.
Aw, cat cam.
You were here before we got here. You'll be here long after we leave, making sure that this goes out as a beautiful podcast, that it gets clipped, that the thumbnails get put together, all of that stuff. Thank you so much. I'm still loving this, the background.
The green screen situation. I'm loving the fact that I get to be in front of all of these iconic Talk Heathen backgrounds.
Iconic. So, what was funny is we didn't have a background for Talk Heathen. And so I Google image searched a large royalty-free church. Like that is what I did. And this was the first thing that popped up.
Mm-hmm.
And then I didn't know how to create a banner or anything. So I just threw this together like minutes before we wound up going live the first time.
Wow, I've never heard that story before.
No, it was fun. Mark was amazing. Just rolled with the punches. And this was the actual first background that Talk Heathen ever had.
Nice.
So love it. Alrighty. Y'all know where we're going from here. Whether you believe or not, winter is coming. It is fast approaching. And with that, COVID's going to get worse. Those of you who are putting yourselves out there in harm's way, from working in hospitals to stocking grocery shelves,
to fighting fires. There are people out there fighting fires right now.
That's right. And justifiably protesting.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing your jobs. We're going to continue to do ours. For those of you who don't believe, this is your community. We are there for each other. I think that one thing that religion has that we don't, not in the way that churches do, is that when somebody is hurting, we would bring them food.
Mm-hmm. We
would rally together. We created that community because that's something that people need.
Yeah, but religion doesn't have a monopoly on that.
That's right.
And because we're creating that here.
Exactly. We're creating it internationally.
This is the atheist movement, and the work's not done.
No, not even remotely. But we're going to do it together.
Yeah.
But for those of you who do believe, we don't hate you. We just think you're wrong. See you next week.
What are we doing, man? What are we doing?